All right, we are live, looks like. So I got Curtis, PE turned RE here today. And I'm not sure where Ned and Derek is, but thanks for stopping by, Curtis.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I think this is a great topic, especially for those newer investors.
Yeah, let's see, smoke that. Like, oh, yes, Hyder's here, always supporting. Hyder's the best. I'll put his channel in soon in the comments. But yeah, well, I mean, instead of waiting for them, so I guess our main topic will kind of be kind of first deals 101, maybe how to get involved in your first deal or get over that maybe obstacles you have in place. But what about you, man? You want to talk about your first deal or how you would approach it now? Now that you have a few under your belt?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the nerves of that first deal, like, okay, are the numbers going to work? Are the things and that I missed? But in reality, if your first deal is a house hack, like a lot of us talk about, the first deal is actually pretty safe because even if your numbers are not exact, you have to live somewhere. So it's a pretty safe bet. Like if you miscalculated what you think you could get for rent, well, you were going to have to pay rent regardless. So you might as well pay a little bit more towards that a mortgage. So to me, if your first deal is a house hack, it's a lot safer option.
Very true. And like you said, you need some place to live. And in your case, you kind of, you sucked it up for a while and you sacrificed and you didn't have a shower in your place. I mean, yeah, you had a toilet, of course, but you had to shower at the gym or your mom's house and whatnot. But that's that little flexibility you do have. So it definitely like that's an easy way. Like you said, that first deal takes away some of the maybe fears, because you had that option. Hey, there's Ray. Thanks, Ray, for stopping by. Hold on, somebody's popping in. There is Ned. Hold on, let me let him in. All right, there's Ned. What's up, man? Can you hear us? Ned.
I'm getting some lag.
No, now I
Can
hear
y'all
you.
hear me now?
Now we hear you.
I can hear y'all, but it's kind of laggy.
How you
I'm
doing,
gonna log
Kurt?
out. Come right back.
Okay, cool. There's Derek. All right.
What's up, guys?
What's up, Derek? I do not see you, but I
Oh,
hear
you can
you.
hear me now?
Yeah, I'm
I
working
can
on
hear you.
my
Maybe we've got the signal's a little weird.
camera here. My camera is
Right, cool.
not turning on, so just give me a second. Can you hear me okay, though?
Yeah,
Oh
we
yeah.
hear you.
Cool.
But yeah, so Curtis, so like, what about you? Like, would there be anything different that you did on your first deal if you were to do it again?
The first deal was actually a better option, and because it went so smooth, like for the most part, smooth. I didn't really. There was a part I missed for my second deal, actually, that I didn't take into account. So my first deal was in Tacoma, which they all have their own utilities. Well, my new deal is in the Lakewood, so the utilities are completely changed, and so I kind of miscalculated what the utilities were going to be. So if I were to redo it, I would probably ask the an owner what the utilities are, ask for like the receipts, or just kind of get a better ballpark. It doesn't crush in the deal, like it's not negative cash flow now, but it's not as like the numbers aren't as accurate as I thought.
What about you, Ned? As far as first deals go, like what did because you've done quite a bit of deals. I mean, if you were to go back, or how would you look at it now?
Ooh. Well, the one thing I didn't know that you could do is you can kind of call up the utility, get an address, and look at what the bill has been, what the history you can get the last year or two, and see, hey, this is seasonal, or hey, this isn't. And that's not as big of a deal here in the South as it could be up north, where the winters and stuff could have huge effects on power. I honestly don't know that would be my first question looking at a property up north, and I've looked at a couple recently, but I'm like, wait, so during the summer, I guess some places don't even use air conditioning, or some places I've looked at don't even have air conditioning. So, but I know that in the South, like the summer, in a lot of cases, if the AC is pretty old, can be more expensive than the winter because of how not insulated a lot of these old buildings from the 1700s are, you know? So, but yeah, looking up the history on the utilities is a big one. The new big one here in the South is insurance. Is the insurance and the taxes? The taxes change. I didn't know that when I bought it. Suddenly, my taxes went from, I don't know, let's say 4,500, and suddenly the year after I buy it, now they're at 6,300, and I'm sitting here like, well, that 2,000 or so had to come from somewhere in my budget. And then that getting hit with a lot of times in the South, at least in our area, the flood insurance is assumable.
Oh.
But if it's not assumable, then your rate might change a lot more than if it is. So one house versus another on the same street could have a huge difference just on whether or not that flood rate is assumable or not. So there's little things like that can have added across enough deals can be a much bigger deal looking back on it than you would think, you know. So
Great points. Derek, welcome. Your camera's working.
What's up, guys?
You got Curtis, PE turned RE here, and Ned. So Curtis is in the Washington area, and Ned is in New Orleans area investing. And I put all you guys' channel links and everything in the beginning of the feed, so go check it out. Go subscribe to everyone's channel or follow them on Instagram. But for you, Derek, you went straight into mobile home parks, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, first deal was it was a 32 lot deal. There was 10 of those were vacant, so there was 22 occupied there. So yes, just completely skipped, had no experience into real estate, and jumped in that way. Which I would honestly, I mean, I would, I like doing that, and because it kind of taught me how to be resourceful in the beginning. If I would have bought deals based on just, the money I had, then, I probably wouldn't have half, a quarter of the stuff that I have now. Maybe not even that. Right. And so I think getting into that like I did actually showed me what was actually possible. And like, oh, okay, I can actually do this and do bigger deals like immediately. You just got to have the right, you got to find the right people and network with the right people.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think, but that first deal's got to be hard. I mean, like I said, me buying a single family home, Curtis house hacking. I mean, we had a lot of fears, I'm sure, but to jump right into like you said, a mobile home park investment, and that had to be kind of terrifying in a way, right? So how did you maybe overcome that, I guess, in a sense?
Well, look, like, when I have goals that I want to hit and things, it's like, it's almost not even like stress or anything. Like it is, but it's like,
All right, man. Sorry, man. You got frozen, Derek. But yeah, okay. So RWO equity is a great question. Maybe kind of heading down this path. But what did you learn about managing stress and emotions during your first deal? Either one of you, Ned, Curtis.
Yeah. For me, I definitely learned something about myself. I definitely sometimes take on too much. Like when I closed on my first deal, school was about to come back into session. I was in grad school and I was trying to fix up my side of the like duplex, and I realized that it was too much. And so kind of like learning where that threshold is, so I can do well in all the aspects of what I'm trying to like achieve and do. But I definitely learned then, okay, you got to focus on one thing at a time. If you try to do too much, or you don't have like a process for handling all the stuff you're trying to do, it's not going to go well, and you're going to prolong whatever you're trying to do.
What about you, Ned? A lot of mindset there, or just
Yep.
you think it was?
Does it look better yellow or dark?
Man, you still look funny. You got to send me new pictures for the thumbnails.
I do. So what I found about managing stress is, well, first off, I think there's a certain level of healthy stress with a deal. If you're not stressed, then I feel like you're going to make mistakes. That's kind of like when I don't know if any of y'all played sports when you're younger, but if you go into a game and you're not worried about it, I feel like that's when the cockiness comes back and haunts you. If you go into a deal and you're just kind of like shooting from the hip and like, I don't need to worry about inspections. It's cool. I know this, and I don't need title insurance. Like, or, I mean, I've never done any of those things, but I feel like if you get into that realm where a lot of people did get there during COVID, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to put in an offer and I'm not going to have any of these requirements. I'm going to step back a little bit from what controls I need to de-risk things on my side because I'm in FOMO mode right now. So for me, the thing I've always used to lower stress to a healthy level, so I think you need some, is if I'm feeling more stressed than usual, that usually means I haven't done my homework.
I like that.
Yeah, Ned, there's so in my health class we talk about there's two types of stress. There's distress, the one where you kind of feel panic, you feel anxious, or brings up the negative, and then there's the eustress, and that's where you feel good. Maybe it's optimal stress, like you would in sports, like right before a game. It's that good type of stress to make you alert and kind of more in tune with what's actually happening.
Yeah, I think that can give you an edge too. Because I mean, you're gonna double check everything, whereas the other guy who's cocky, you can go steal a deal from him, or her, whoever it is.
I don't want to give too much because I didn't watch the video, but Zuber this morning said it's the most important video he has out this year, and Curtis already watched it. But I think that's kind of what we're touching on, right? I think the video was about like kind of mindset and how to handle stress and things like that. So I think that's an important thing. So even there's this tweet I saw today, and it kind of relates to all of this. It was like, when I was 29, I was surprised when shit went wrong. At 34, I'm surprised when shit goes right. And I think that's kind of like what it is, right? Real estate or investing, right? After a while, you start realizing like stuff's gonna happen, right? And you just got to figure it out along the way and whatnot. So I love that. So how's everything? So like for you, Derek, especially you're in Florida, right? It is like,
Yeah.
stuff going because of the flood or hurricanes and everything. How's everything going for you right now?
As far as what, like in the parks and operations?
Your stress
and
level,
things?
yeah, like your stress levels, I guess. Is there things going on that you're dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always like whenever a hurricane is coming through, I'd be lying to you if I said that there wasn't like a little bit of worry there. There's definitely some, but like, as Ned was talking about, like having that, little bit of stress when you're buying in Florida. I'm not buying in flood zones. I'm not buying on the coast. I'm buying inland. So I'm really like buying specific deals in Florida in order to mitigate that. So we really get wind, which, we've never really had any catastrophic things, but like, stress out about it a little bit. Most of the parks that we buy in Florida, the homes were built. These parks have old homes, 60s and 70s year made mobile homes. So they've been through more freaking hurricanes than all of us combined and a lot of people here in Florida. So, if you're buying on the coast and you can have a 15-foot storm surge, like, yeah, definitely worried about that. But the way we buy, it's less of a factor, but I still worry about it, obviously.
But kind of like you touched on too, though, right? I mean, people have been doing it for how many years, right? Before you, there's going to be people doing it after you, and people just got to figure it out. But Hyder has a great comment. He says he remembers hearing lumberjack landlords say every deal to number 46 when he could absorb a total loss was stressed at the signing. So I think that's kind of, at some point it does get easier, but for a lot of people, it's really looking at it from you always have that in the back of your mind. Are you making the right decision? I think.
Yeah. And I'll tell you that it happens. I've closed a lot of deals, and we closed 3 last month, and it's the same shit. Like, I go through, dude, I'm like, oh, I'm paying too much for this every single time. Like, every single time when I get like we're getting close to closing, I'm like, ah, I think we're paying too much. But obviously, in hindsight, I look back at these deals. I'm like, we did really well. The deals we closed last month. The way that they're going now, I'm like, okay, we bought those right. But there's always just something there. Like, you want to get it for cheaper.
Yeah, yeah. And then you look back 5 years later, and you got a great deal, probably, right?
Ah,
For like,
of course,
right?
of course.
Yeah. And then Hyder, another one. After 24 years in construction, 17 years self-employed, very few jobs have gone as expected. Yeah, and that's what I always tell the younger guys in the firehouse. It's like, yeah, of course we're going to train and do drills and study up on certain things, but it's like no fire is the same, no incident is the same, no matter what. You roll up to scene and you got to make a split decision a lot of times, and a lot of it goes on your experience and your training, but you kind of just got to figure things out. And even like you, Curtis, football, I'm sure, right? Yeah, in practice, it's easy to run plays when it's designed to go a certain way, but shit, a lot of times it's the blocking's not right, or something's gonna happen, something's gonna break down. You got to kind of improvise a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I always assume that something's going to go real bad when I buy something, so I try and be a little too liquid for when I go after deals. So, for example, the fourplex that I'm selling, it's actually about to go on the market later this week. But when we bought it, I mean, at 3.5% down FHA, it cash flowed $800 a month with me living in it. And I was living in half the square footage. I was living in 3,000 of the 6,000 square feet. So this was a crazy good deal. But about 12 to 18 months into it, we found out that while we were rehabbing a unit, that termites had gotten into this wall or that wall or whatnot. And then when we went to remove a wall, we found out that the ceiling was plaster. So there were a bunch of crazy stuff popped up, and suddenly a general rehab job that was all aesthetics, we found out, like in offices, how they have the ceiling tiles that are in the suspended system, they had plastered over one of those. So we were trying to figure out why certain parts of the ceiling were starting to sag, and it was because the wires holding it up underneath were starting to pop. And as one popped, all the stress moved to the other ones. And now you have this roof that at any moment could just fall on whoever was in there. And we found out because a water leak came through a wall because there was because the exterior, one of the windows had an issue with the frame, and that came in and got the plaster wet, and it was just a ticking time bomb. So I got to tenant out, and then who knows how many dollars later in renovations, suddenly I had a 2-foot higher ceiling in 2 of my units that I didn't know about. So nothing goes to plan.
Yeah, it's funny. Oh no, go ahead.
Nothing goes to plan, but I mean, I'm always worried. If I hadn't been worried, I wouldn't have had the reserves, and I wouldn't have been thinking far enough ahead to know that I needed to have the extra flexibility and equity in other properties to throw together a real quick line of credit to then go and do those repairs. And in the beginning, I think that comes from not stretching out to 150% of what you could buy and buying a property where if anything goes wrong, you're bankrupt. It's hard though. I think that's the hardest part, is like, how do you stretch in the beginning to get that boost of growth that you get with that 3.5% down FHA? Because you increase your equity by 10% with 3.5% down. You're like, oh man, look at this great return. But if you were wise and did the 3.5% down so that you could have that extra cash in your pocket in case something goes wrong, instead of using all your money for the down payment because, hey, now I'm less leveraged, you know, the answer of what to do in my mind hasn't always been less leverage, because sometimes less leverage is riskier because now you don't have any liquidity. You know, for me, I like having a little runway. They used up all my runway when that happened. So it sucked when it happened. But at the same time, had I been less risky and used less leverage and gotten rid of my liquidity on the front end, I wouldn't have been able to survive that hit.
Mm.
Or, I mean, I probably could have raised the money to fix it or whatever, but the way I solved it wouldn't have been a solution that would work.
So Hyder says experience makes improvisation easier. And then let's see, Ray says having a decent amount of reserve cash on hand is a great way to mitigate risk. Investing your last dollar for one deal can bite you on the ass soon as there's a single setback. Yep.
Yeah. That's so true. And what you said, Ned, the second deal that we bought, we bootstrapped it. We didn't bring that much for CapEx and, repairs and things. And so every month we're like selling houses and collecting rent so we can pay for this repair and do this and do that. And it's stressful, dude. It's super stressful. So now, like, when I go do a walkthrough of a deal, I get an inspection of the utilities and I figure out, hey, what can happen? And then I bring reserve capital in. So this deal we're buying next month in Orlando, I'm bringing, I think I have 40 grand in reserves just for infrastructure that I'm raising up front. So we have that. And if nothing happens, great, we'll redistribute that back out to our investors. But I like to have that because the last thing you want to do is do a capital call or even use your money, right? That something you didn't foresee because you were trying to bootstrap a deal. And I see people screw up on this all the time. They're like, I got to put 20% down for this deal. It's $1 million deal. I got to bring 200 grand down. So they only think they have to bring $200,000. No closing costs, nothing, doc stamp fee, there's nothing, none of that. Right.
I like buying stuff from those guys on the back end.
What's that?
So I like buying stuff from those guys on the back end.
Me too. Me too. But yeah, in addition to that, like not bringing the additional capital that you were talking about, because your one, septic or drain field blowing out disaster $20,000 later is not fun.
Yeah, those mobile home septics are. Do y'all do us? Is it like one main septic, or does it vary from property to property? Sometimes you got one for each trailer, or like I don't even know how that kind of stuff works. And that.
Yeah, it's different because so a lot of these parks in Florida, they were developed in like the 50s and 60s, so it was like cowboy land when they developed these things. And so some of them are there's one septic to two homes, and then some of them it's 1 to 1, some of them it's 3 to 1. It just really depends, and you kind of never really know for sure when you're buying it until you go in and like do the inspection. And if you're buying a big park, if you're buying like 100 space park that has 50 septics, okay, you're going to pay $375 per septic for them to pump it out in due diligence. No, you're not. I mean, you're just going to do a portion of it because you're not going to pay 40 grand to do that in the beginning. So it's a balance and finding out like this area was, oh, hey, there's, the grass is greener here. Okay, we're going to pump the septics out on that side.
Gotcha.
Right? So it's strategic in figuring that out if you're buying like a bigger park.
Say what's up to Hugo. Stay Winning is here, so go check out his YouTube channel. He's doing some cool stuff on there. He's back on X, but sorry, man, I don't have your new X link, so I'll get it and put it in the chat next time. Another good question here is, what's one unexpected challenge you encountered and how did you handle it?
So on my first one, the duplex, I do the inspection. There's some things, and we go re-inspect it, and everything mostly looks good. And we get to the closing day. The tenants there have like a month or a couple weeks to like move out. I move in. And then the bathroom floor, it's like soft. That wasn't like that during the inspection. It wasn't like that during the walkthrough. So somehow within that month, the floor got soft, which I don't know how that happened. And so we tear out the LVP that's there, and then we're like, gosh, it's still soft. Like you can feel it going down. So then we take out the subfloor. Well, the shower was like floating. There was no support under the shower, and it got missed because the insulation was in a way that when we went under the house, you couldn't see if there was a beam there or not. So we had to put a beam there, replace all the subfloor, replace all the LVP. Luckily, I know somebody that really came and kind of helped me through it and did most of the work for pretty much no cost. But if I didn't have that, that'd be thousands of dollars that I'd have to spend.
Yeah.
Can't think of one really off the top of my head. What unexpected?
I've got a few.
Oh, hey, go ahead, man.
I got a few. One of the most wild ones. We were closing 2 properties, and I get a call from our property manager at our properties in Tampa, and they're like, Derek, you got to get down here. I've never seen anything like this before. I've got code enforcement here, the building department, the fire department, the police department, the construction investigator department. I'm like, what what is going on here? So,
Just say it. You can swear.
so come to find out, like the end of the story was this property manager was like a bad dude. But anyways, the city had came in and slapped, I think it was a little over 70 stop work orders between 2 mobile home parks. You guys know what I'm talking about? The stop work orders, the sticker. So they had slapped those on the 2 parks, Pelican 1 and Pelican 2, right beside each other in Tampa. And over 70 stop work orders because one of their people basically because people did rehab their homes. Like, don't get me wrong, they did. But this overzealous guy came in because he was pissed off at the crappy property manager and gave all of our tenants all of these violations, like for building without permits. And it was a freaking nightmare. This was in 2022, and I still think we have like 6 that haven't been fully solved yet. Like, talk about, this was very stressful. Tenants were so pissed and calling and like, what, blah, 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 blah. Because basically the crappy property manager told everyone that they could build and that he would pull the permits for them.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Dude, it is funny. It's crazy. It's crazy. And so, lots of lessons learned from that, but eventually we had it solved, and gray hair and stress and a lot of money later, we're still standing and those properties are doing well, but that was a wild one.
Sierra stopped by, Homes and Hustles. Thanks for stopping by. And then Ike, firefighter in Kansas. I just did an interview with him, so go check it out. But he said, I keep forgetting to count utilities when I buy a property. Getting them activated and running during the rehab can add up. I never thought about that. What about you, Ned? Anything or what else? Any other stories from your end?
I mean, the only one I've got multiple that stick out, but the 2 biggest ones are obviously the rice field and the gang activity at my property. I don't know which one you want me to tell.
I want the gang one, man.
Of course, man.
I told you about that. I just wasn't sure if you wanted that kind of content on your channel.
Well, they tried to cancel me last week, I think, because the time I had a bunch of firefighters on, we started talking about politics and the pandemic, and then I tried to go live the next couple days after, and none of the guests could get in. Yeah, sorry, but they figured it out. But Yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Man.
I ran into an issue because right when we first bought my first commercial property, we did. I mean, I guess it was technically it was my second because the first one I bought was 4 single families on one lot. So I guess like that technically qualifies since it wasn't 4 houses individually or whatever. But 2 10-plexes sharing one lot. I've told this on your channel before, and I wasn't sure how you felt about it, but basically, we found out that there was a felon hiding in one of our units because we got a call from the cops saying that the SWAT team was about to bust down the door for one of our units. And so the SWAT team shows up, and I get the call at like 10. So I'm out there with my buddy, a couple of my military buddies, and they showed up ready for let's just say anything. we're all very concerned, and the SWAT team had kicked in the door, found a guy who apparently earlier that day had pulled out a firearm and had executed someone in the middle of an intersection in broad daylight in front of a bunch of so it was over some dispute over illicit substances, et cetera, et cetera. Wow. And this tenant had been harboring her boyfriend, who we don't know if she knew or not, but we have a pretty strict part of our lease that says if you're harboring it, if you're breaking the law, and that's pretty up there, harboring a felon, that we can give you 30 days. And so when she moved out, his friends came by and did a drive-by in our building.
Holy shit.
While people were in it.
Oh my God. Oh God.
So I can go and find pictures, but basically there's I don't know, 10 or 20 bullet holes all throughout the side of the building, and we were thankful that it was primarily all on her unit. So I guess they were just upset with the fact that she no longer had housing, and we had to go in and figure out how to I guess drywall repair is drywall repair, but I was trying to figure out like, hey, are these ceiling supports and is the engineering still good on this? Like, I don't even know how to figure that out. So that was my 3rd week ever being in like low income housing, and I was kind of like, man, what did I get into? But we figured it out, and it turns out that SWAT team doesn't repair for doors they kick in. I mean, they don't.
Wow.
They definitely didn't pay for this or that, and so we had to foot the bill on that. And it was just kind of like, well, I guess this goes under general maintenance. At least I can write it off, but that capital's gone.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
Wow. Did the other tenants move out? Were they like freaked out?
No, that was the interesting part. Was the tenants were kind of like, "Hey,
That's
this is
the
par for the
interesting
course in the building."
I see. I see.
And I'm
They're
like,
oh
"Whoa,
yeah, this is
hold
normal."
on." What? And so I spent the next 2 years basically cleaning it up. I got rid of all the problem tenants. There's no longer people selling and doing stuff like that in our building. And since we turned it around, I've had cops drive up when I'm outside working on the property, and they said, "Hey, man, we really appreciate y'all cleaning this up because it's helped out the neighborhood a lot." Oh. Neighbors come over, and people have gotten to know me, and hey, look, this building for sale. Hey, do you want to buy this one? Because it'll really help the neighborhood if you do what you did here to this one over here. And so that kind of stuff really kind of pays dividends in the long run if you kind of view yourself as trying to help the community with stuff like that. So believe it or not, we turned that into over time. It took us a while, but it turned into one of the best investments we've ever made.
Oh, nice.
But it was rough.
Yeah, that took a turn of events, that story.
Well, we bought it and the gross income was $4,800, and I think this month it'll be like $18,000 or so.
Nice.
There you go.
Almost enough for your private jet, man.
I'll get there.
G7?
No, I can't stand in one of those. I'd probably have to get a global.
You can't stand in a G7?
I'm too tall.
Oh, okay. How tall are you?
I'm 6'4", 6'5".
Okay, well, I understand. I'm not, so I can probably stand in a G7.
Yeah, I can really only stand on a global or a BBJ, and the fact that I've looked into all this stuff lets you know that I've got goals.
Yeah,
yeah, I love that. I love it.
Yeah. Let's see. What key lesson did you take away from negotiating with sellers, buyers, or contractors? Maybe on your first few deals, I guess, as we're talking like first deals 101.
Don't trust them.
Mhm.
I mean,
Don't trust. What do you mean?
like the
all-
contractors for sure. I mean, like they overpromise and underdeliver, and we found this so many times that we actually don't just use one contractor. We have multiple contractors that we use because we don't get them too busy. Because when you give them too much work, that's when they start screwing up. That's when they start dropping the ball because they don't have like
Mhm.
the staff and the support to manage that many projects. So I'll give like, because we had one contractor that we relied on so much and ended up getting screwed over in the end for this exact reason. And so I have like 10 contractors in various places, and we use one for a little bit, this one for a little bit, this one for a little bit, and this one for a little bit. And it works out well because we don't give them an overwhelming amount of work, but it's just, anyway, I've learned hard lessons in this business. So like, and that's one of them that we've learned
Probably helps keep the price a little more honest too.
for sure. For sure.
What about you, Curtis?
Yeah, I would say the one that has the power to walk away really has the power during the negotiation. Like especially when you're like early on, you probably want that deal like really bad, right? Because like, gosh, I want my first deal or I want my next deal. But if you're too hungry, then you can give too much or you can concede too much. And so just being really firm in what your expectation is or what your numbers are and being okay. If it doesn't work, just go on to the next one.
Yeah. I learned most of my negotiating. 'Cause I work in oil and gas and finance, and one of my mentors in oil and gas, he dabbles in collecting, let's just say, heavily discounted assets. And he likes boats. And so he was always sitting there, and it's almost like the mindset of a house hacker, but he didn't like paying to have his boat sit in a marina. So he started looking at marinas that were for sale
Hmm.
and looking around at all these different marinas. Cause I mean, I would have never even thought of buying a marina, to be honest. And turned out during COVID, someone in New York, must have been a hedge fund, did a roll up where they went around America and they just bought every mom and pop arena they could get their hands on. They didn't care what the price was because money was free. And so they bought all these marinas, and then they stepped back and looked at it and said, well, all of these aren't making money, so let's sell those and keep the good ones, I guess. So, which is a strange way to go about it. You think you would do a little more filtration on the front end and not on the back end, but I guess they were just trying to get through it with the FOMO. And my uncle Eric, or one of my uncles, was looking at this, and basically he got the idea. Hey, I'm just gonna put a low offer in, and basically their asking price was some crazy number, and he came in at 25% asking. And then walked when they laughed at him. And they came back about 6 months later and said, hey, haven't gotten any offers. What do you think about like 95% asking? He was like, well, how about 24% asking? So he lowered his offer. And of course they didn't respond. And 3 or 4 months later, they came back and they're like, well, how about 80% asking? He was like, how about 23% asking? So every time they came back, this whole like meet in the middle thing was like, I'm not playing that game. And I honestly never would have even considered that was a game you could play. But since he looks at it and he's looking around and he's got, I mean, I've never asked how many he's got, how many things he's looking at, but I know it's got to be hundreds. He's got hundreds of little offers out there left and right. And every now and then, probably once a year or so, he comes in and says, hey, got a deal. And it's always some absurd discount that never, ever, like, you're like, how? And he's like, well, I bought it and it appraised for 300%. The bank let me buy it for 0% down because there's so much equity they didn't even care. But he's always, and he'll pick weird markets like marinas and I know he was looking at for a minute. He was like, well, it'd be cool to be able to just like go down on the islands. And I think at one point he's looking at yacht clubs that had gone bankrupt, like just weird assets that like banks just don't want. He's like, well, if I bought it for $1, I could probably cash flow it. That's kind of the way he looks at it. He's like, and if it's sitting there for sale for 3 years and they've got no offers, it might be worth more to them, just not on their balance sheet. And with that marina, when he did buy it, what I remember is he bought it. And I was kind of like, well, why were you interested in that one? He said, well, if you look at the payroll, it turns out that it was ran by family. And there were 2 family members on it in management, making the same salary as the actual property manager. And so when he let go of the 2 of the 3 total property managers, and then eventually got rid of the third, I think it was something, because I mean, there's not much to keeping a dock repaired. And he literally has like a little shed off to the side, and there's a hammer and a jar of nails and some boards in there. So if a board wears out, that all the tenants and the boat owners know, hey, well, he's not coming to repair it. I got to go get a board and pull it out myself. So he's got all these tricks, and that's just one example of a deal he's done. But as far as, hey, you got to come in with an insulting offer like Zuber always says, I mean, as far as insulting offers, I think that's pretty up there, is like 70% under market. And of course it comes in appraising for around what they were asking for it. But he was just kind of like, I don't need that because I've got 300 other balls that I'm juggling, and one of them's going to need my money. And I don't care if this deal works out because I'm working on so many others that I'm not going to get emotionally attached to any of them, because I've got this email off on the side, and I've got that deal flow churning. I've got the emails going out, emails coming in, and if they never call me back, I don't care.
I think that's so important, right? Like, I think that's what we're all trying to do, right? We're trying to get our income to a certain level, and then not that you're going to be reckless, but now you can maybe like dabble in other things or kind of have fun, and maybe, like you're saying, look into other asset classes and whatnot, and see where else you can make some money. But it's getting to that certain income stream first.
But anyone on this stream or on this video call could have bought that asset for 1/3 market value. If you go to a bank with a piece of paper that says, hey, I can buy this for 1/3 of what it's worth, a bank's going to let you do zero down on it. So they'd be foolish not to. And anyone can go out there and reach out to 1,000 deals on market or off market, no matter what kind of deal they are, and figure out a way to finance that kind of stuff. I mean, to some degree, from what I understand, that's similar to the method in the mobile home business, and it should be similar to what we're doing in the real estate business, no matter what asset class you're going after.
True.
You're looking for some level of value. But I mean, if you put out every year, you called every single door in Hawaii, you probably better find one house you could buy for 1/3 value at least once a year. That's a lot of houses. There's one.
Okay, so do you think that's because? So let's say, I think you see how much people probably don't even get into real estate, right, or start investing because of whatever obstacles they put in front of them. So do you see it? Do you think it's more the uncertainty of that asset class, or the size of it, of what you're talking about, that's preventing people from jumping in on it?
Well, in the commercial business, there's just less people looking, especially at the less desirable assets that have some kind of distress, or maybe they're mismanaged because there's something going on with trust or some kind of ownership situation where someone's maybe been bedridden for a few years and the family doesn't know how to manage it, but they did. You're going to end up with all these situations that are going to cause assets to just over time deteriorate into something that the family's going to have to sell at a loss or try to get rid of. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be that something awful is happening. It might just be that, hey man, this was really hands-on asset. Last 5-10 years, I'm kind of retired. I would rather just travel and let it deteriorate and take the cash flow. And then at some point, it'll be somebody else's problem. And there's infinite reasons that could happen. And if you go in and solve somebody's problem, which is all we're really doing when we buy assets, whether no matter what kind of real estate or business asset they are, that problem might be, hey, I want to move the capital from inside this to somewhere else. There might not be anything wrong with the asset. It might just be a bad time in the market, And I think there's a layer between the big Wall Street stuff people are going after the A-class stuff and the single family stuff that has most people getting started out looking at. There's a layer in between of the assets that are too small for the big guys, but too big for the average person to consider looking at. And there's so little interest in that particular sliver of the market that anyone coming in and looking at a lot of those assets is going to raise interest on the seller's side of things.
True.
So, I mean, that's how I found my 20 unit. I got it for, I don't know, maybe half value.
Hyder says, as a contractor, I won't accept a job too large or too many jobs. That's what referrals to friends are for. Let's see. How did your first deal shape your long-term investment strategy?
It was huge. It was huge. Maybe not necessarily. I guess it was long term, but what I found in the first deal is that I could buy really nasty value add trailer parks. Your trailer park that everybody knows in their town. It's like, ooh, nobody wants to live there. I figured out that I could buy that and add a lot of value in various ways. And so I would go look for those kind of deals. And we bought so many deals in 2021 because I figured out that the seller has like their FU price. So like, hell yeah, I'll sell at that number. Right. But the number I knew I could pay, and I was stealing it, was their FU price. So it was like, bang, we're just knocking down deals like crazy. And so now, I still look for deals, like that. Pretty heavy value add on one end of it. Because, these parks, some of them, we'll double the value of them within the first, 1 to 3 years in some cases, and sometimes even triple the value of them. And then, one of the parks that we bought last month was a more stabilized park that's still, the rents were $500 below market. And so it'll be like a steady grow there, but it's a lot less work. So I like mixing the both of those now. Heavy value add, I can get massive jumps in equity, and the ones where we can still make decent cash flow. It doesn't require a lot of work. This park, you drive there and you're like, why the hell am I here? There's nothing to do. But because we bought the first deal and figured out that we could, get these big jumps in value in these parks that no one wanted, we could go after those. If that makes sense.
I think for me, the biggest thing from the first deal is that, yeah, the house hacking works, but it's that I can actually be an investor. And I think that was the biggest takeaway, is that it's possible. And so while the first deal is good and everything, and it showed that house hacking works, it more showed okay, I can kind of see the path into that real financial kind of independence route just via getting that first deal done.
Good point. Now, kind of touching on that, though, would you say now that you had a few deals under your belt, would you be willing to do a joint venture or partnership right off the bat?
That's not really my area. It's more so that I kind of want to do it on my own. I see the value of doing the partnerships. I'm not quite there yet. Whereas if I mess something up now, it's just me, right? Like, oh darn, okay, I messed up that house hack or whatever. But I don't feel quite prepared for that partnership aspect, and I'm not really sure what my role or what I want their role to be yet too. And I think when you do a partnership, you have to be very clear on what each person's role is in that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like I have my partner Paul. We're literally the anti of each other. Like I like to go find deals, raise money, like get on social media, do webinars, like talk to investor. Like I can do that. He likes operations, systems, processes, nerds out on that. And I'm like, great, man. We're a perfect match, right? So I think like you need to have some of that because I've had partners before on deals that if we got the same skills, like what's the what's the use? So I think if you're gonna partner, because you need to think from like not just hey we're friends we're gonna partner, but from like your long term equity strategy. Like where is this person adding value? Because you're giving up your own equity, right? So you need to get something back that's like, hey, I can't do that, or I freaking hate doing that. That is worth it for you. So I don't think I think it's good that you're being patient with that because it's you need to decide like, hey, what do I not like to do, and then maybe there's your partner, the person who likes to do that kind of stuff.
I like that. Late start wealth, John. Thanks for stopping by. He says Florida has more than a few closed golf courses that are growing weeds. And then Hyder says golf course maintenance is not very difficult either. There you go, Derek, in your neck of the woods, man.
Well, no, Ned can come by all the value golf courses here. He's like, I rolled up golf courses in Florida.
Oh man, that's a rough business, man.
Yeah.
All right, you
I
guys.
do not want to get into the golf course business.
Yeah, I'm good.
I mean, one thing that, and this is, I guess, a little off topic, but kind of on topic specifically of the partnership idea. So, in in the oil and gas world, we look at partnerships as a way of diversifying and reducing risk. So let's say we're looking at an oil and gas field. So we particularly do what are called portion of our portfolio is basically three parts. We've got what we call infield drilling, where there's a known field. We go out there, hey, there are these 40 locations. If we drill those, we're reasonably sure within like a 90+% margin that we're going to get a return on those. And the ones that are dry holes will basically let us know, hey, don't go any further that way. So as you find out there's no oil there, it redefines like your idea of geographically where that underground asset moves out to. So as you're developing, it helps you build a picture of what it is you're working with. So every well after that has a higher rate of success. And then there's royalties, where you're basically just buying like the royalty income from a landowner who owned a field that was drilled years ago, or has an area that might get drilled in the future. And then there's the third, which is wildcatting. That's when you go out and you just basically like, hey, we think there might be oil over there. And you drill a hole and you cross your fingers and you do a whole bunch of homework and look at the geology, and you might make your money back. But the problem there is that well might cost you, I don't know, $5 or $10 million. And what people think is, hey, oil and gas is expensive and I can't get into it because like that number is really, really high. But what they don't realize is in most cases with small businesses like ours, we might have 50 partners on a well. Someone might only be $10K into their position on a particular well, but that might be spread across like, hey, Or I mean, I've seen people who've got less than $1,000 in a well, and they go up to, hey, this person is 80% of a well. And the idea being, hey, we know that these wildcat wells, especially with these particular operators, hey, they hit a home run once every 10 times. But we know when one well pays out on average in this area, it looks like they're going to make 12x. So that means we can drill 10 wells and make it 20% return on the total investment, because one's going to pay for the rest that didn't work out. Or we can put all our eggs in one basket and make one bet and hope that that's the one that's not a dry hole. Right? And that's a different way to think about it. So a lot of these smaller investors, what they'll do is they'll go participate in a bunch of little stuff. It's almost like making an index fund of a bunch of different oil properties, because they have an idea of historically how that area performs, how many wells are gonna work. So I think a lot of people with a lot of these issues we were seeing with these syndicators when they go to raise money, a lot of newer people to investing were like, hey, I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket with this one fund. Where if they had spread it out over 20 funds, if 2 or 3 didn't work out because they were stimulus ballers from COVID or whatever, then that risk can be offset by spreading out over more stuff, because you know that those other assets can you know, you're basically diversifying, but you can diversify across more stuff quicker if you're more worried about the risk in the beginning by taking on partners. So I would say Derek probably has lower risk in a lot of ways because he spread out so many different units over those mobile home parks. His risk starting out might have been higher, but he became less risky more quickly than a lot of us whose portfolios have grown slower, even though his portion of each of those parks might be smaller because of the way, or I don't know how they raise capital, but could have been a bunch of different ways. But the more you're spread out, the less you're gonna, have problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's in my camera screwed up again, so sorry about that, guys. My tech is
That's all right, man.
I get an F for tech today. But yeah, Ned, you're exactly right. I mean, if you look at it, we've got 41 properties now, and so yes, in the beginning, a little bit more risky. I kind of just threw it all in, but now that we've refinanced stuff, rolled stuff up, we rolled up like 20 properties in 2022, and so yeah, you're right. Now it's much less risky because it's spread across, and if one deal blows up, well, like we have one deal that's actually, we had a zoning issue that I think, Ned, you mentioned this in the beginning too, getting arrogant about due diligence, and we did lackluster due diligence on this one property. And lesson learned, we didn't catch the zoning issue, and so we ended up having to lose some units there. Like, in the thing is, we'll still end up making money on that deal, but not as much as we would have. But the point being is that now that the risk is spread across all the properties, that one is not that big of a deal, especially when we've killed it on other properties. So now, coming up at the beginning of the next year, we're doing another roll up where that deal will be thrown into the roll up, and it'll almost be like kind of like a non-event, because the other properties have gained so much value that it will sort of cancel out the lackluster performance of this one, if that makes sense.
Are you just going to do like a 5-year revolver on the portfolio, or I don't know if we should get too technical on commercial financing. Never mind.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What were you going to ask there?
Yeah. What is a roll up? Like, what does that mean for folks that aren't in that world?
Yeah. So essentially, it would be like me taking, like we took 22 properties with 22 different loans on them and went to a bank and said, hey, look, we have this stabilized portfolio now. Give us one loan on the whole deal. Right. So we rolled them up, and it was essentially like one large refinance to make it simple.
Remember what I was saying earlier, as like you get more assets, it stabilizes and your risk lowers. Banks feel the same way about financing the asset. If you go to a bank and you're like, hey, it's a different discussion if you want to refinance your 2 rental properties versus if you go to a bank and you're like, I want to refinance my 2,000 rental properties to be ridiculous. That is more appetizing because they're going to come in and say, hey, if this is low leverage, if this is good asset base, this is lower risk, and we can bring in 15, 20 other banks and we can lock in a really big deal here. The banker gets a whole lot more commission, you get a lower interest rate. There's just more flexibility with stuff like that, and there's also less rules. So he can put all kinds of cool, nifty requests as far as how that mortgage or that revolver or whatever that whatever debt structure he's using. There's a lot of flexibility with how that works, and you can literally negotiate with the bank. Hey, no, I don't like that clause. Take that out. Otherwise, Goldman over there really, because you've got banks at that point who want to own your debt.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And two, so I was, me and my partner were personally guaranteeing all that debt with the big loan. Now we're not. So it's non-recourse debt. So the debt is guaranteed by the property. I mean, when you go buy a house, via bank debt, you probably have to personally guarantee the loan, right? Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Same way? Yeah, so you're basically, the collateral then is the property and not my own balance sheet, which is a huge, it's a big win. And I mean, once you get getting to scale, you may there's a point where you're like, people ask me like, Derek, I bet you got a lot of freaking headaches. I'm like, no, dude, I had more headaches when I had one property.
Yeah.
I had way more headaches when I had one property and 2 properties because they were freaking calling me. Tenants were calling me. I was the property manager. Now we've got a system, a team, and it's so much easier. Once you get to scale, I mean, there's more responsibilities for sure. You have, more investors and things like that. But generally, it is easier once you get more properties.
Cool. Good stuff, fellas. And then, Hyder was saying Ned's putting on a risk mitigation clinic on today. But Chester's been bothering me to get him a moderator stuff. And part of it was I forgot how to do it. But he mentioned it in the comments. So he has the wrench now. Wait, what is Chester saying now? So a portfolio loan has its benefits and drawbacks.
Well, I would say it has more benefits than drawbacks. I mean, if all the properties are stabilized and there's no risk of huge, capital expenditure kind of stuff happening.
You got to clarify the definition of portfolio loan because there's multiple before you answer the question, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what are we meaning by portfolio loan here?
Because there's the portfolio as in your portfolio, or there's the portfolio loan in that a lot of local and smaller commercial banks will hold the paper, so the portfolio, the paper stays in their portfolio versus being commoditized and sold. I don't know what kind of debt structures you're using. Are you bringing in multiple banks, or are you using local credit unions and stuff like that, or?
Initially going into a deal, it's more like local banks or smaller regional banks. And then when we do the big roll up, it's usually a larger regional bank that does that.
All right. Yeah. This is a good chat today, guys. Let's go for, I don't know if you guys got time, maybe about 10, 15 more minutes, but
Yeah, I think the talk about risk is great, especially for our opening topic about about doing your first deal, is because the risk of not investing or not taking that leap. Yes, we talked about our challenges or unexpected things, which there's obviously risks there, right? But the risk of not doing it, let's look at that.
Yeah. There's
Great point.
a huge risk in that. Because think about that. It's a great point, because if you're like, okay, I didn't do this deal, now I don't have the skills, I don't have the knowledge to go, the confidence to go do the next deal. Like, I think I talk to people all the time that are like, they're waiting for this perfect deal to get their first deal, but it's
Oh,
like, dude, just
it
freaking go,
bothers me
man.
so much.
It's like, you're like, I literally talked to a dude that, like, yeah, a guy was trying to get to invest. He's like, no, Derek, I don't want to invest. I want to be a general partner on a deal, which is like someone who controls the deal and puts the deal together. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I mean, whatever. But he's like, yeah, this guy's literally been trying to get into the mobile home park business for 20 years and has never bought a park. Because none of the deals work. The deals are too expensive now. Like, you were saying that in the year 2000 when stuff was like, a fraction of the cost now. So don't be that person that's like, there's never going to be a freaking perfect deal. Like, you're going to have to get into the first one and figure it out.
Well, and I mean, you can cheat. Hey, I don't know how to do that. Well, when you go to a bank, I mean, and you know this, Derek, when you go to a bank on your first deal, especially if it's commercial, they're like, well, what makes you qualified to do this? And if you say, I have a management company that does that, they're like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
You can literally, like, everyone that should be on your team that does the thing you don't know how to do, you can just hire them. They're a part of it once you, like, especially in the beginning, like, everyone's heard it on a smaller scale. Talked about, hey, build your team. You need a realtor, you need a banker, depending on where it is. If you're not going to self-manage, you need a property manager. All of those pieces, when you bring them in to qualify for a mortgage, no matter how big or small the asset is, help the bank become more secure with you, because you don't have the skills yet on your first deal. That's the biggest cheat code you get out of house hacking, to be honest. When you buy a house hack, they don't care about all that, because, like, you're not going to come home and let the literally the other half of your building or whatever fall apart, because you can see it. And then when you go to buy your next property, if they say, hey, well, what's your experience? The bank says, oh, well, he had a duplex that he lived in. Okay, he's good to go. Now you suddenly qualify for more mortgages and more products than the average person does, because your credibility is automatically that much higher in the eyes of any bank, any underwriter for any mortgage, because you have self-managed before. I don't think people talk about that enough. It's a huge advantage to get from house hacking.
Yeah, it's huge, and I use the like Hemlane as their software. And what's really great about that is, as you set up your properties on Hemlane, it's asking you questions, kind of help out like the tenant with the onboarding, and it makes you think about things that you may not have thought of when you first start out. Like, what does the tenant need to know about the property, so that way the move in and the onboarding can be smooth. And so if I ever get off of Hemlane, I now know what processes to set up.
Was that a big thing for you, Derek, when you bought your first park?
What, getting the
like
bank?
your team, as far as, like, was how concerned was the bank with if you used a bank for that whole picture? How'd you sell your story?
Yeah, so the first deal, like, we paid all cash, and then in the second
You
deal,
cheated.
luckily, well, luckily I had a partner on the second deal that was, had at least a little experience, but it still wasn't easy, because I didn't have any experience, for one, and he had just very little experience, and we're buying these dilapidated trailer parks that, they're somehow in 2021 we were still getting 65 and 70% leverage on these deals, but it was tough. It's not easy. And now, like, I have a guy in my mentorship program now, he's buying his first deal, and it's a rough go of the bank. Like, does he have experience? Like, it's it's definitely something you have to get around, but after you get around it, it's much easier to do. Even, after we even had that first deal, and even the second deal, after those were like done, it was relatively easy to get debt after that, because the experience, what you were saying there, I mean, the experience it's huge for banks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think at the beginning, a lot of people think that they can't take that jump or that risk. But really, if you take that risk or the jump into the deal and it goes south, well, that's actually the safest time because you're just going to go back to where you were a year ago.
Yeah.
That's really not that bad.
Yeah. I mean, it really is training wheels. If you expect it, like, I know everyone on all these real estate channels always harps on house hacking, but you don't need to do it. But that's going to get rid of so much anxiety. Because worst case scenario, the bank already did the underwriting. Like, hey, if the tenant's not there, are they going to go bankrupt? Hey, Derek, you came back for a second.
I know. I'm trying to figure.
And so that they've already underwrote that little deal to make sure that it'll still work even if you're not there, or even if you're not running it well. So
Hey, he's back.
you've got so much flexibility figuring stuff out when you first start out, which is why I don't know. You can go into the bigger asset stuff if you've got experience in business and stuff like that, or if you have a partner or people around you and a team that can help you problem solve that. But you're going to get better with each deal you do, and you can look at tackling more complicated things each time you do this. I mean, the stuff that I'm willing to consider now is infinitely more complex, and I would never have even considered it when I first started out. You know, you scale up.
Yeah, Curtis's comment, or I mean, yeah, his about the not taking a risk is put in some good comments in the chat. So Ray says the risk of not investing at all guarantees loss of capital due to inflation. And
Yeah.
Ike
Makes
said,
it even worse now.
yeah,
Well,
risk
you
of
also
not doing anything. That is a
you
huge
risk not
factor.
scaling up. You're not going to grow unless you push yourself. At some point, you're going to have to stretch a little bit. Even if it's all cash, you're stretching a little bit. I mean, hey, someone might not pay rent. So,
Yep. And Derek, there's a video I watched from a guy who teaches how using science to break down those lofty sky high goals into manageable day-to-day actions.
Interesting. Send the link somehow. Would love to see
Yeah,
that.
Chester, don't just put those things out there without giving us reference.
Yeah, come on,
Late
Chester.
start wealth. House hacking as a cheat to experience. That's one big reason I targeted duplex or ADU property. Yep. He's in Florida. Late start wealth is in Florida. I always forget where. I'm going to say Gainesville, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
So if John, if you're still here, but yeah, he's working on a house hack right now. I think he's under contract. Actually, he's in the closing process right now. Oh, see, Chester, there he goes. Puts the right there's the link.
There we go.
Anyone wants to check it out. Yep. But yeah, if you guys got anything else, any other topics you guys want to chat on before? Oh, are you guys still like part of Bigger Pockets? Did you guys see that email from them today? I sent it to Zuber. So because one of my last lives was about what's the next direction for Bigger Pockets when David Green left or they separated. But I got an email from them talking about they're going to have passive pockets now. So they've partnered with I think it's called Left Field Investments. I could be wrong, but sounds like they bought out Left Field Investment or something. So looks like they're gonna have like this platform to help.
oh no, they're turning into a fund.
No, I don't know if they're turning into a fund, but I think it's almost like resources to evaluate funds so that people don't get taken advantage of. So it's going to have things in there that have vetted operators. I think that's what it kind of looks like.
Yeah, the funds are going to have to pay to play to be able to get access to all the money in Bigger Pockets. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah, so
They're going to pay to be
the email I
advertised
got.
on there.
Yeah. So, so I sent it to Zoo. I said, hey, you might find this interesting. So he might talk about it tomorrow or something. But yeah, so it's called Passive Pockets. It's going to be. Yeah, John's in Gainesville. He says hopes to close in 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good luck. Hope it goes well.
Cool. Yeah. Anything else you guys want to chat on before we wrap things up, or maybe if you guys, I got this tweet here that if you guys want to talk about real quick, or maybe what you guys would do, or I saw this tweet and someone says, "How the f do you make friends as an adult if you don't drink?" So I don't know if you guys drink or not, but I don't drink anymore. So
I don't.
yeah,
Well, that's easy. Pick a hobby, something you like to do. Look up a group online, and then go hang out with the group.
That's kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
yep.
There
Like,
you go.
I'm a huge nerd. I like playing magic cards. I go to a store. Other people play magic cards. Hey, I have a new friend group. Like, just it works with anything. Like, hey, I like football. There's going to be a football bar or like some fantasy football league, or maybe a softball league. Or like that. What are you interested in? Google it locally. Go find the group.
Well, that's right.
I
Curtis
mean,
is a Bears and Crocs fan, so that's why we get along.
There's probably a croc group somewhere online.
Probably.
Other than ours.
But I did get to join the. I don't know if you guys follow them, but I the Drunk Real Estate group. I'm in their fantasy football league. So Jay Scott, AJ Osborne, and Mauricio. So they have a podcast. But yeah, so they had a fantasy football league and they're asking for people to join. So I commented on their YouTube video and yeah, I'm part of their league. So we'll see how that goes.
Nice.
Yeah,
So
Chester.
the book that helped me the most when I was getting started, it's called Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate by Brian H. Murray.
Mhm.
And it was the book he wrote before he was famous and did the collaboration with Brandon Turner. And his first asset that he bought was, I think it was an office building. He kept looking at houses and then couldn't find a house that he liked. Then found an office building that was really in distress and only had like 30. It was only 30% occupied. And the whole book goes through him just like figuring out how to finance it and stumbling into like, oh, hey, there's no thermostats in this building and they're all broken. So when it's too cold, everyone just opens their windows. When it's too hot, everyone closes their windows. Like that's how and so he put in thermostats and suddenly increased the net income of the building by 10%. And suddenly it was cash flow positive, even with 30%. It's just like all these little things that he goes and finds. And it's funny because in my mind, when I went and bought my first asset, I was like, there's no way that little things like that are so obvious are going to be add value on these deals. And there's so much low hanging fruit on some of these properties that it's just mind blowing. Like, how did the owner not do this? In so many situations, I've seen stuff like that. I'm sure we've all seen stuff like that. You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Could be as simple as like LED light bulbs in the parking lot. Like, I don't know. Like, there's.
Yeah. So Hyder says, I don't drink and I have lots of friends I have yet to meet in person. Yeah. That was great about the event last year. You got to meet a lot of people at the Vegas event. But yeah, Buzzton, he's lucky I found him and saved him. But he says, I like hanging out with this community because no one drinks into oblivion where you end up sleeping in the backseat of your car. That was Buzztoon's MO. He used to go party so hard on the weekend and he would have pillows and stuff in the backseat of his car so he would just sleep on the side of the road. So I gotta keep an eye on him in Vegas.
Nice.
So late start world. I used to be in a tea bucket group where they all built hot rods, open coupe styles. Yeah, Buzztoon, no jail in Vegas for him. All right. Well, this was fun, fellas. Thanks for always doing this and willing to hop on and chat about all kinds of random things. Any parting words? Anything else you guys want to wrap up with? Nothing. No politics. Nothing. No 25% down that Kamala's proposing, or
Wait, 25% down.
Or 25K down. 25K
down. 25K.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll enjoy. I'll enjoy the equity. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. It's like weird. It's like, who's advising these people? It's, I don't know. Whatever's.
Well,
people that own the real estate are the people that are advising her.
Yeah.
No, I feel like politicians speak in clickbait.
Oh yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
It's like they don't even really care if it works. It just if it sounds interesting and it'll trend and get them votes, they're kind of like, all right, we'll figure it out later. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Cool, fellas. Well, thanks for doing this, and we'll do it again soon. All right, everyone. Thanks for stopping by.
Cool.